Alright, well, my editing skills are crap, but can the same thing be said about Resident Evil, the final chapter? I didn't quite get that. Resident Evil, the final chapter. That was a little better. Stick around and find out. I don't know what that is. It reminds me a little bit of, like, that's kind of the feel of the score in this one, Don't Spill Your Drink. It's got kind of a cool electronic hybrid type sound, which I like in scores, but nothing really stand out and fantastic. Anyway, I'm Peter Franson from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions. This is my uncut review of Resident Evil, the final chapter. Alright, the synopsis on IMDb reads, picking up immediately after the events in Resident Evil Retribution, Alice, played by Mila Jovovich, is the only survivor of what was meant to be humanity's final stand against the undead. Now, she must return to where the nightmare began, the Hive in Raccoon City, where the Umbrella Corporation is gathering its forces for a final strike against the only remaining survivors of the apocalypse. All right. I don't really remember this series. I've seen all the movies in the series, and when I saw the last one, I was like, that's it. I'm done. I just can't stand watching these anymore. The only way they'll get me back in the theater is if the next one is like the last one, definitely. And so, crap. This one is the final chapter, so I felt obligated to review it and see it. And anyway, you know what to expect if you've seen the previous movies in this series, I think, for the most part. I would recommend at least watching the first movie in this series before this one if you haven't seen any of them before. Although this is really made for those who have watched all the movies in the series, which is like, how many now? Do they have more of these movies than they have mainline Resident Evil games? I'm not even sure. This script, let's talk about that. There are so many whys in this script. Why would that person do that? Why would that person not do that? You know, or why would it work that way? You know, I think the best chance of enjoying the movie probably means not ever asking why something is and just accepting that it is. It's like, okay, I don't understand why in the world things are like this, or why people are doing this. Why? I don't understand the why. But this is what's going on, and I'm just going to watch what's going on. Unless, I think, the deflector shield principle is in place. And that's a little term I came up with that's based on a friend's story from college. My friend Lori Tossing in college, hi Lori if you're watching, once told me that she was such a big fan of Star Wars that she and her friends, when they saw the TIE fighters or the X-Wings flying around and you could see the little matte squares following them around, betraying how they, made the effects in those sequences, they just kind of said to themselves, oh, we see those, but those are just the deflector shields, And so the deflector shield principle basically says that if you're enjoying other elements of a given piece of fiction enough, then you will find explanations for the parts that other people might see as flaws, And so if you love it was the mashup, which is fairly unique to this series, I think, this mashup of, okay, it's post-apocalyptic, it's got zombies, which are a dime a dozen, and those two are often paired together, but it also has gore monsters above and beyond zombies. It also has science fiction, and some science fiction environments that are not post-apocalyptic, but still have a clean science fiction look. It's got horror, and it's got action and guns and stuff, So if you love the fact that all of these things are being mashed up and put into one movie, then you might come up with reasons for all of your whys, even though it may take a little bit of work. There are some nice reveals about Alice's backstory that flesh her out more than she has been in the series, and also potentially explain, with the help of the deflector shield principle, why she has been such a capable action hero even during her depowered entries in the series. You might remember that in one or two movies she had these powers that allowed her to be like super duper kicker, and then she lost those powers. But then right after she lost them, she was still kind of a super duper butt kicker, And so some of the things that they reveal about her backstory in this movie could potentially offer an explanation for that, although I don't think that's necessarily the intention of what they reveal about her backstory. Anyway. At the same time, Alice has more vulnerable moments in this movie than I remember her having in previous movies, and I really appreciate that. That helps me feel a little bit, tense for somebody when the action doesn't seem to be so easy all the time. And she had, especially in an opening sequence of this movie, it was like, oh man, she's hurting, she's struggling. It's like, okay, now I feel like I can empathize with her and want to root for her a little bit more instead of just watching back, sitting back and watching her unleash carnage, while being cool, The action is pretty constant in this movie, with a little time left here and there to quickly exposition really fast, and then back to the action, So it brings the series to a satisfying conclusion, and yet they couldn't resist leaving things just a little open-ended. I don't think we're going to see a Resident Evil, the final chapter, part 2. They could technically get away with it, but oh man. But like I said, open-ended is different from cliffhanger. These movies previously, I think, have all ended on these kind of cliffhangers where it's like, oh my gosh, what are they gonna do next? It's not that kind of ending. It's just a little open-ended, All right, so I'm not really going to say anything about the cast. They all do a fine job, in my opinion. The script just never asks for subtext in their performances or subtle emotional expression. It's just all there on the page, and they just deliver what's on the page, I feel like, for the most part. There's maybe a few minor exceptions. So it's not really like an actor, type of movie. Stunts and visuals, hey, if you've seen, it's kind of like a big trailer that they try to cram a plot onto. Lots of action that kept me visually interested, though not emotionally invested at all most of the time. And the closest I got to being emotionally invested in the action was just like, ooh, they're gonna get cut. Ooh, is that person gonna die? Ooh, which I didn't even feel at all in the last movie. I never tensed up even slightly in the last movie. So step up for me in this movie. And CG is CG, and there you go. So I always try to ask myself when I'm watching a movie or playing a video game, is there anything of, philosophical, spiritual, or moral significance that might stimulate worthwhile thought or conversation as a result of watching this movie? I was really not expecting there to be anything in this movie, but there actually was. It was kind of interesting. I don't remember the previous entries in the series well at all. But it seems to me that they are introducing in this movie a strange religious motivation to the main villain that I don't think was present before. The villain basically wants to wipe out most of the human population to cleanse the world before humanity destroys itself. He takes inspiration from the story of Noah and the flood, as all world-cleansing psycho-villains seem destined to reference at some point while they monologue. But he also has like a special knife with like a portion of the King James, of course, version of Romans 12:19 etched into it, saying, "Vengeance is mine, I will repay, saith the Lord." So, yeah, he's either missed the fact that, like, that the Lord saith that, and that's, like, God's job to carry out vengeance, or he thinks he is God. I'm not sure. Thematically, I'm willing to believe the latter, that he kind of sees himself as, like, an agent of God, maybe, or something, since the idea that the villain, or maybe God himself, because the idea that the villain has created a bunch of clones is repeatedly a part of the plot, and he's kind of played up as their creator, Now, I don't want to imply at all that I know kind of what the writers and the filmmakers are thinking and what message they want to put out there. I'm just going to present some wild speculation. My guess is that the flood story is often attached to villains in general. This is, again, wild speculation, because there's something about the idea of God judging humanity that people just don't like. And so they might even, when they look at the story of Noah, see God as kind of the villain in that. Alternatively, it could be someone, this is just a way of playing up the villainy, that, someone taking on a role that belongs to God alone is like the height of presumption and villainy, and that is, and maybe that's the focus of a villain using the Noah story to justify their actions. Or The third option it could be that it's just this device, this to reference the Noah story before you just try to destroy the world. It's just been used so many times that writers just don't even think about why they're using it anymore. It's just something that villains say. I also find the repeated use of the King James version of the Bible in movies to be interesting. Why do they do that? Why is that just the go-to translation, I wonder? Maybe they do it because there's no copyright restrictions involved. Maybe most non-Christians assume it's kind of like the one true translation. There are some Christians that believe that too, and I got to say I have serious problems with that view. Or maybe it just kind of sounds old and churchy, and they're just kind of after that old churchy vibe or whatever. In any case, I think it's always good to remember that the Bible was not written in English or even in Latin, so our interpretational efforts should get as close as they can to the actual source material in Hebrew, Greek, etc. Maybe if we do that, we can avoid starting world-destroying cults or lesser problems. Anyway, I have no idea what your tastes are in movies, but if I were a time traveler, well, I'd go back in time and I'd say, hey, Pater, skip this one. Try rewatching the first one or two movies in this series. You haven't seen them since they were in theaters, probably. If your deflection shield principle kicks in and you're enjoying the mashup enough, then keep going through the rest of the series, see how far you make it, and if you make it all the way up to this one, then just red box it if you're still interested at that point. But chances are you're never going to actually run into enough free time that you'll want to use to give these movies a second chance, so maybe just play some video games instead, like Resident Evil 7 Biohazard, that you just reviewed this week on this very channel. Anyway, that's it. It's rated R for sequences of violence throughout. Those are my thoughts. I'd love to get yours in the comments below. Friday, February 10th from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. is my Conflicted Game live stream where for 6 hours I'm going to do nothing but play games that I have given up on because I just said they're too hard and they're too frustrating. So I'm going to be banging my head against the wall playing these games for 6 hours. You're invited to join me and take some pleasure out of that. If you can, you sick person. That's going to be right here on this channel. If you go to spiritblade.com, you can see our audio dramas and other goodies that are there for you. And if you want to like, share, and subscribe, that'd be great. If you like this video and want to share it with others and want more videos like it, then those are the things that you can do. Also, there's a ton more content and community, boom, at christiangeekcentral.com. I hope you join us there soon as we continue to geek out. And there's the button. Seek the truth.